Ukraine had gone on the offensive. It had new money, it had new weapons, it had new plans, and then Russia won. Now Putin tells it all.
Welcome to TFI Global, the antidote to mass delusion.
It has been 6 months since Ukraine, backed by advanced weapons and training from Western allies, launched a significant counteroffensive. The aim was to alter the dynamics of the conflict with Russia, which began in earnest with Russia's invasion in February 2022. However, despite these efforts, Ukraine has not made major breakthroughs on the battlefield. Consequently, the country is actively seeking more military assistance to sustain its defense and regain lost territories. President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, recognizing the critical need for continued international support, visited Washington earlier this week. Following this, he embarked on a tour of European capitals. His goal is to secure ongoing aid as the conflict shows no signs of a quick resolution. The situation on the ground is complex, with the Ukrainian military struggling to achieve decisive victories against Russian forces. On the Russian side, the military has maintained its defensive lines across the southern and eastern regions of Ukraine. These lines have remained completely intact, showcasing the challenges faced by Ukrainian forces. Russia has also been on the offensive in certain areas, particularly in Avdiivka, located in the Donetsk region. This has added to the difficulties Ukraine faces in altering the current stalemate. The approach of the harsh winter season adds another layer of complexity to the conflict. The Ukrainian military and government are exploring new strategies to break the deadlock. This involves attempting to recapture territories lost to Russia, which constitute roughly 20% of Ukraine's land area. Ukraine's June counter-offensive targeted 3 key points along the approximately 1,000-kilometer front line. These included 2 axes in the south towards Melitopol and Berdyansk, and another in the east towards Bakhmut in Donetsk. Bakhmut was a significant loss for Ukraine in May, and its recapture was deemed crucial. The primary focus of the Ukrainian military, however, was the southern front. The objective there was to breach Russia's formidable defense lines and reach the Sea of Azov coast. Success in this area would disrupt Russia's land bridge to the Crimean Peninsula, annexed by Russia in 2014. Without this land bridge, the only link between Crimea and the Russian mainland would be through the Kerch Bridge, spanning the Strait of Kerch. This bridge has been a target of Ukrainian attacks since the onset of the invasion. In the east, the Ukrainian military believed that Russian defenses might be weaker in Bakhmut. Ukrainian side experienced heavy casualties in this region, indicative of the prolonged and intense nature of the battles there. Despite these strategic calculations, the situation on the ground remains fluid, with neither side able to claim a decisive advantage. But of course, all those plans remained on paper, and Ukrainian forces face severe defeats. Russian President Vladimir Putin spent over 4 hours on Thursday responding to journalists' questions. He stated firmly that Russian forces are actively engaging in several areas of the front line. This follows their defense against a Ukrainian counteroffensive. Putin also noted indications of declining U.S. support for Ukraine, as evidenced by a delay in the approval of a new aid package in Congress. Putin reiterated his objectives in Ukraine, which he has consistently described since the invasion almost 2 years ago. These objectives include the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. These terms were central to his rationale for launching the invasion. Currently, Putin perceives himself to be in a relatively strong position. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky returned from Washington without securing additional aid. He had visited the U.S. Capitol to urge lawmakers to approve more support for Ukraine. In this context, Putin highlighted his view that Western military assistance for Kyiv is diminishing. He commented on Ukraine receiving extensive support, referring to it as freebies. Putin suggested that this support might be nearing its limit, indicating a potential decrease in Western aid to Ukraine. Despite discussing the ongoing conflict, the Russian leader reiterated his openness to peace talks. However, he did not express any willingness to make compromises. Putin emphasized that peace would be achieved only when Russia accomplishes its goals in Ukraine. This stance suggests a continued commitment to the objectives he has set forth and a potential prolongation of the conflict. During the lengthy session with journalists, Putin also commented on the situation in Gaza. Amid widespread criticism of the high civilian casualties in Israel's conflict with Hamas in Gaza, Putin attempted to draw a distinction between the actions of the Russian military in Ukraine and those of Israeli forces. He claimed that the civilian casualties in Russia's offensive have been minimal. Look at the special military operation, his term for the war in Ukraine, and look at what's happening in Gaza and feel the difference, Mr. Putin said. Nothing of the sort is happening in Ukraine. Putin also expressed confidence in his global popularity. He suggested that many people in cities across Europe, the United States, and other regions of the world support Russia's actions. In many cities in Europe and the US, not to mention other world regions, a lot of people think that we are doing everything right, he remarked. Despite the current tensions, Putin predicted a potential improvement in relations with the United States. He emphasized Russia's willingness to build better relations with the US, acknowledging the global significance of the United States. As for the United States, we are ready to build relations with them, Putin stated. We believe that the world needs the US. Putin's remarks showcase a confident man, fully assured of his victory, not worried about the next elections, and someone who knows how media-created images seldom last and truth starts speaking for itself. And his hope for America somehow sounds like hope for Trump, but isn't Trump the hope for America anyway?